I am indeed, Germano. Thanks so much for that. I'm joined now by the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Stephen Mnuchin. Secretary, thank you so much for joining CNBC. I want to kick off by asking you about what's been happening over the last several days. This war of words between Tehran and Washington. We've seen the latest round of U.S. sanctions coming out. We're expecting more sanctions. Walk us through the next steps here for your government.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to be here with you again. I think you know we continue to have the strongest sanctions ever. This week, the president signed a new executive order giving Treasury even broader authorities to put on sanctions to the Supreme Leader's office and assets that are held by them. And we will continue to enforce our existing sanctions. I announced this week also specific sanctions against individuals that have been responsible for bad activities. So we believe the economic sanctions are working. The president is willing to have conversations on the one hand and doesn't want war, but the president is also determined to enforce the U.S. and our allies' interests in the region.
So you've said that there are going to be more U.S. sanctions coming down the pike. There's been a suggestion that they could include the foreign minister, Javad Zarif. Can you confirm that? And also walk me through what other tools you have in the bag here, because already some 80% of the Iranian economy is under sanctions. That's according to the U.S. Secretary of State. And there are fears that you're running out of tricks in the bag.
I don't think so at all. So, again, they are at about 80% now. We will ramp them up close to 100%. We will allow for humanitarian activities. Again, our issue is not with the people of Iran. Our issue is with the bad behavior of this government. And we will continue to enforce these sanctions, which are working.
I want to read some of these comments to you that we've heard from the Iranian government over the last couple of days. They've called these sanctions outrageous. They've called them idiotic. They've even, depending on which translation that you are reading, they have even called the White House mentally retarded. How do you respond to that kind of rhetoric?
Well, let me just comment on the sanctions issue. That must mean that they're working. If they're this upset about these sanctions, that's an acknowledgement that they're working. But again, I want to be very clear. Our issue is not with the people of Iran. Our issue is there is really bad behavior. They are sponsoring terrorism throughout the region. They are creating instability in this region. They are endangering our partners and our allies and our interests, and we will not stand for that.
Walk me through what's happening at this Peace to Prosperity conference, because there's been a lot of criticism ahead of this conference. Some people are saying, hey, this is a waste of time without any political solution on the table as well. What's your take?
Well, my view from the last 18 hours here is really this has gone quite successful. First of all, we've had an enormous range of participants from both private investors, from the World Bank, the IMF, government people throughout the region and around. I look forward to this afternoon. I'll be having a finance minister panel that will be the concluding session. And I think what really everybody hears and what everybody's echoing at the tables here is really this is a very manageable plan, that this is something that actually can be done and will lead to tremendous economic opportunities for the people of Palestine and the people of the region. And let me just comment, this is not just investment in Palestine, it's investment in Jordan and Lebanon and in other areas. And really, this is about economic opportunities. And as I said, there's a path that people really see is very doable. Steve Schwarzman said yesterday, you know, the $5 billion of investment into Palestine alone, you know, that's one or two deals for them. So I think there's a big commitment with the right governance, with the right environment, that people are excited about the economic prospects for the region.
I was talking about that actually with Steve Schwarzman this morning. He called me out on it because I was discussing his comments yesterday. He was basically saying the Palestinian territories are like Singapore was decades ago. He also compared it to Dubai as well, the potential there. He said low on natural resources, but high on human capital, human potential. But at the end of the day, Dubai and Singapore had a top-down leadership structure. They had real leadership. And the question for the Palestinians and the Israelis right now is the right leadership in place to get a political solution that could then lead to this kind of economic prosperity that you're looking for? Is this going to take a different leader than Benjamin Netanyahu, do you think, to get this done?
Well, let me just say, I think this is both top-down leadership and bottom-up leadership. I think Netanyahu has demonstrated terrific leadership in the region. They've obviously built within their own economy, a tremendous economy.
But the Palestinians don't trust him.
Well, I'm not going to really comment on that. I think that the trust is built up on both sides. The trust is built up. I think the other thing is everybody acknowledges this needs to be an international solution. This isn't just about Israel and Palestine. This is really about an international solution and economic support. And I think when the Palestinian people see that this is a very, very real plan for economic prosperity, for the young people there are great opportunities. And that's something that we support and something that the United States and its allies are committed to.
And the president plans to lead on this.
Absolutely.
Walk me through what you think is going to happen in the next several days of this meeting of the G20. What's your outlook there? Are we going to get a deal? The president was really saying he's not anticipating a deal, but what could we actually see take place at the G20?
Well, I think this is going to be a very important G20. I look forward to participating with the president. He has many bilaterals that are important relationships all around the world. I think, as you know, the U.S. is the bright spot of economic growth. There's slowdown in China, there's slowdown in Europe. So one of the things we really will be talking about is the economic opportunities around the world. I think, you know, trade is a very high on our agenda, and it's really about free and fair trade, making sure that we have free two-way trade. Obviously, we're looking forward to the meeting between President Trump and President Xi. I think, you know, Ambassador Lighthizer and I have been integrally involved in negotiating, and I hope the message that we want to hear is that they want to come back to the table and continue, because I think there is a good outcome for their economy and the U.S. economy to get balanced trade and to continue to build on this relationship.
The president really laying out the opportunity there that he wouldn't then impose these tariffs, trying to keep some kind of goodwill. What's your outlook there?
Well, again, I think we look forward to the meeting. I'm hopeful that we can move forward with a plan. The president wants to see the right economic opportunities, and this has really been going back for the last 2.5 years. And President Trump and President Xi have a very close working relationship. We had a productive meeting at the last G20, and I look forward to this one.
Are we going to see a deal by the end of this year, though?
I can't speculate on that. I'm hopeful that we see a deal, but there needs to be the right efforts in place, and this isn't you know, a deal for having the sake of a deal. We were about 90% of the way there. I think there's a path to complete this, but we'll see where we get.
One of the things that's been on the minds of a lot of the folks that we've been speaking to over the last several days here in the Persian Gulf area, of course, is the potential for that international coalition in terms of protecting shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. I had the chance to catch up in an exclusive interview with Brian Hook over the weekend. He suggested the possibility of this. What kind of conversation are you anticipating when you come to the G20 on this specifically? Are we going to see some kind of contribution from China and other Asian nations in terms of monetary contribution? Can we expect to see their ships in the Persian Gulf anytime soon?
Well, there would definitely be discussions. This is an important issue, not just to the region, but to the world, and particularly to Europe and China, where they depend upon energy. I think, as you know, the U.S. is a large exporter of energy now. We will continue to show leadership in this region. We have a lot of assets in this region. I look forward. I'm going to meet the Admiral of the Fifth Fleet this afternoon, which is based here in Bahrain. The U.S. has been a leader and will continue to be a leader. But as the president said, we're going to balance our interest, and the rest of the world has to be part of this.
Because at the end of the day, that's trillions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer money that's put to work supporting the Fifth Fleet here in Bahrain. And one of their main objectives is to keep these straits open, and the Strait of Hormuz open, in fact, as well. I mean, is it at the point where we really need the contribution now of China and other Asian nations, considering the fact that the oil is going to those markets and not coming to the United States?
Well, I would just comment, the U.S. under President Trump's leadership, we've made a major investment in our military, and that is something that is very important to our interests. But the president has also been very clear. He wants to see our partners and our allies contribute. It's not fair that for the U.S. taxpayers that we should have to absorb the cost of defense all over the world to support our allies.
And finally, sir, I have to ask you, when we talk about what's going to happen at the G20, we talk about these trade talks with the Chinese. One of the things that we study very much, obviously, in this part of the world is the foreign policy aspect of anything that you do on the economic side of things. And for the Chinese, this is not only just about getting a trade deal that works for them, but it's also about saving face, whether it be internally or externally, and even in terms of their relationship with North Korea as well, because there's no doubt that we need the Chinese, don't we, when it comes to the situation with North Korea and getting a deal there as well. How do you balance this? Because at the same time that you want a great deal for the United States, no doubt, you have to understand that they need to go home looking like they won as well.
Well, China and the U.S. really have the same interests as it relates to North Korea. Neither one of us want to see North Korea with nuclear weapons, and that is a major focus of both of ours and our allies. So China has been very important in helping us with the sanctions. I look forward to their continued cooperation in that area. And again, there can be a win-win here. There can be a very good deal for the U.S. and a good deal for China. China has a very large, growing middle class. The U.S. can absolutely continue our exports into that middle class. And I think the economic reforms that President Xi has put forth are very important to China. China's economy is slowing. China needs to create more job opportunities for their growing population and quality jobs. They have a need for education. The U.S. has been a great supplier of education. Medicine is somewhere where the two countries can work together. So I think there's lots of areas for cooperation, but we need to get the trade area balanced, and that's really something the president is very focused on.